Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining our estates webinar today. We'll be looking at understanding how you can manage an estate using the Land app. For those of you who haven't met, I'm Dan Gira, and I'm the Innovation and Partnership Lead here at Land app. And I will today be taking you through, for approximately 1 hour, all the different functions that can help you as an estate manager or as an estate team start planning for the future. A bit of housekeeping before we start. As this is a webinar, all of your cameras and microphones will remain muted, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. Please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions, and there is a dedicated 15 minutes at the end to go through those Q&A. Feel free to stay around after the webinar. We'd just like to stay around for another 15 minutes to answer any questions, and I will be around to hopefully handle those. The webinar is being recorded and it will be added to our YouTube channel, but do give about 3 to 5 days for our team to get it up. Also, when you leave the webinar, there is a feedback form, which just opens up a little pop-up in your web browser, and it'd just be really useful if you could answer those questions. There's a couple that just inform these webinar series, but there's also a bit that helps product development, in particular with estates. There's a couple of questions around property management softwares and integrations that we're looking to do. The agenda today is really to look at a bit of best practice for a couple of key functions, but then also give you a bit of an understanding about what else we do in this space, including some updates on what future functionality is coming. So we're going to be looking at naming your maps and making sure they're formatted correctly, how you can build an accurate estate boundary using our various data layers, how you can then take that estate boundary and purchase Ordnance Survey Master Map, which is the authoritative data set for the whole of Great Britain, how you can then split that boundary into your various tenancies and in-hand farming enterprises, and then just a couple of other features such as our Rural Payment Agency import function, which allows you to import data directly from their database, and some other functions as well. As a note, we'll be demoing a mixture today of free functionality, so things available in our free software, but I put an asterisk where there's a subscription required as well. As I noted, Q&A at the end, so please do pop any questions you have in the Q&A function throughout. And I think we have activated the voting system, so if there's a question that you do want answering, please do feel free to vote it up as it comes through. This is the third webinar in March. The other 2 webinars, so the introductory training and facilitating farm groups, are now both on our YouTube channel. I'm assuming that during this training session that you have at least a rough understanding of what happens within the Land app, but if there are anything you need to go at any points you need to go back and look at, I'd recommend going to look at those 2 webinars in particular. So the Land app itself prides itself on its data, and so I just wanted to share a couple of slides on just some key partners and some key sources of information that we rely on. The first is our various data providers, from government agencies to research bodies. We host a number of different data sets within the software and make it as easy as possible for you to be able to toggle those on and off and see where you do and do not intersect all those various layers. And they cover designations, they cover habitats and market incentives as well, and a lot more. And I will spend a brief moment going through those in the app, but definitely one of the first things I'd recommend doing if you haven't before is just logging on, creating an account and having a play with all the different data layers we have. We keep these up to date live, which means that every night we just go and check whether any of these providers has updated their data set. And if they have, we do a full refresh, which means that within 24 hours, you should expect to see all the data updated within your Land app map. We also pride ourselves on our partner network. We've got a huge variety of users, partners, organizations that regularly contribute to the Land app, and we're very grateful for all the advice and wisdom that they provide. And we definitely wouldn't be here without all of you, so thank you. And that does include a number of key estates that we're really proud to work closely with. And obviously, if you're a new estate coming to us, we'd love to see your logo on this list too. Before I dive into the demo, I just wanted to spend a bit of time going through some key rules for estates, both in terms of best practice, but also in terms of how your maps should look once you start building them within the land app ecosystem. The 5 rules that I've written down here, just for takeaways, is 1, have a single authoritative map that contains your ownership boundary for the entire estate. We do see often people have multiple maps that are trying to represent the same thing. So just try as an estate, have a single map that's called master map, or Manor Estate Smith master map, that just contains that red line boundary for everything that's under your ownership. The second key rule is, as you start using the land app more and more, you will create more plans, and that's just natural. But what we really recommend is that you start using our folders structure. And so folders enable you to file away any important layers, any important documents that you no longer need to clutter up your map. And I'll touch on that later. So for example, you could have a folder that's called 2022 claim, which includes your basic payment and maybe your countryside stewardship claim as well. The third one is one of the key ones in the longer term, is just make sure you're naming your maps consistently and your plans consistently. And I've got a structure that I'll show you on the next slide, but rule of thumb is just make sure that in the map name that you've got the template type you're using, e.g. countryside stewardship, CSS, the farm or the estate name. And then if you are dealing, say, with tenants or more devolved data sets, do feel free to put in the surname as well. It just adds to the structure. The fourth one, which I'll be touching on today, is just when you're defining your boundary, try and use both land registry and, if applicable, SBI number. So if you're in England, use your SBI number as well. The reason for that is that just gives you the widest breadth of authority. The land registry does cover all of the buildings and maybe undeclared woodlands, for example, and then your SBI number provides you with quite nice granular field parcel data for which you can create your plans. And then the fifth rule is just when you're working with a contractor or tenants, do create a separate map. So at rule number 1 was to create that authoritative master map. If you're wanting to collaborate outside of the estate or maybe with new members, create a separate map, upload data into that map, and therefore you can have this second area where you're not sharing everything, but you're just sharing what's relevant to that that contractor or that tenant. What we've done is we've created a bit of an infographic for estates on what good could look like and how your map can be laid out. So we're going to be talking through a couple of these templates during the session. But for example, at the top, we've got ownership boundary, which is just a red line boundary of what's under your ownership. And we've named it boundary _ estate name. We're releasing a new template soon, but for the meantime, I'm going to be demonstrating the ownership management plan. Just how can you then divide that ownership boundary into the various components? Where is your in-hand land? Where are your tenancies? Where's all your different rights, etc. But you can hopefully see the structure that we're trying to promote is that each one of these plans represents a workflow, represents an end-to-end process, either defining a boundary, defining where your existing tenancies, leases, sales are, etc., all the way right down to countryside stewardship and your habitat baselines as well. We will be sharing this infographic with everyone at the end of the webinar, so don't worry about taking too much notes. And obviously, the session is being recorded as well. Today, I'm going to be focusing on 3 of those templates. Firstly, just how do you define that ownership boundary? How do you then break it up into the various management components? And then how do you start drawing up some estate infrastructure as well? Just going to take a pause and move across to the land app. So there's quite a few of you on the call that are new to the land app. So very briefly, we're at thelandapp.com. You can Google us land app, and you can come and create a free account by hitting the join for free button or the sign up button at the top right. Once you create an account, you should be able to log in and start creating some maps. I'm going to start by showing you a map of an estate. Chumley Estate up in Cheshire, who we've been working with quite a lot for the last number of years. And I just want to show you just the 2 key layers that I'm going to try and build today. So you can see just visually what that looks like on the land app interface. So the first thing is an ownership boundary or an estate boundary that's clean. You can either have it as a red line that just goes around the outside, or you can have it with a bit of fill. And that can be changed by using the styling button on the top right. So we can change the style We can make the fill completely transparent, or we can add patterns and stripes, etc., if we so wish. That ownership boundary itself contains data such as the total area of the estate. This is just shy of 3,000 hectares, but also that red line boundary means that you can start looking at where the estate is in relation to other data layers. So I can go into the top right and see some data layers. For example, am I in a designation such as SSSIs? I can turn those on and you can see now, I can see which part of the estate, for example, is designations. Those data layers can be built up, so I don't just have to have one on, I can turn on a number of different data layers, such as AOMVs, which I don't think we're in. I mentioned habitats before. Great Crested New Opportunity Areas, I think, is one of the prime ones that this estate, for example, is starting to look at. And I'm just going to change the transparency so we can start to see those areas. As you layer up those either targets or designations, you start to get a real insight into where this estate sits in the landscape. So I've turned on flood zones as well. As with interactive mapping, you can zoom in on those. I'm using my mouse scroll wheel. So I'm scrolling in and out using the mouse wheel, but you could also use the zoom in and out function on the left-hand side. So that's the first thing, is we're together going to build in probably about 10 minutes, just an arbitrary estate boundary on a new map in a moment, but I just wanted to show you what that boundary could look like. And then secondly is a tenancy plan, which is a breakdown of that estate by all the various management components. So within here, there's different tenant types. Some of them are, farm business tenants, some of them are agricultural holdings, some of them are easements, forestry, etc. And what we want to do is just provide you with the tools to be able to start clearly and authoritatively building up these types of plans. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move onto a new map, a fresh map, and I'm going to slowly together start showing you how you can build up a map that starts to look like this. I'm going to first go back to my organization page. I'm going to then go to the top right and hit new. And this could be demo estate map. So I'm going to change the tag from cluster. So that was last week's webinar, or yesterday's webinar, and change that to estate management. I'm going to create an empty map, and what that does is that then drops me in the middle of the country, which is over Birmingham. The first thing I need to do is find the location of my farm or my estate. So I'm just going to get a postcode, and I'm going to go use the search bar at the top of my map, which is here. Copy and paste that search bar in, and that should then allow me to zoom into the area of interest, which is Chumney Estate. I can change the base map. So at the moment, by default, we've got the license-free OpenStreetMap, but I can change that to either Ordnance Survey. So for example, Ordnance Survey Grayscale or Ordnance Survey Color, or I can change it to other layers such as satellite imagery or aerial imagery as well. Which one I'm going to use today? I'm probably just because it's a lot cleaner, I'm going to use the Grayscale layer. As a note, if you're on the free software, you will need to pay for Ordnance Survey credits as you're browsing the map. If you join our professional subscription, you can, one, start to access the Ordnance Survey Data Hub if you're eligible. So if you're providing tenancy advice and helping your wider third-party network, or if you purchased your OS license, which I will touch on in a moment, you can also access that area unlimited for free, including the printing element as well. So I'm going to first start by building a red line boundary for just part of the estate. I'm going to first, by doing that, hit the new button at the top left. I'm then going to choose use template, which is the first option. And I'm then met with a splash screen of all the various templates that the Land app hosts. And these are the templates that we're referring to in that infographic. Each of these represents an individual workflow. So if I am trying to build a basic payment scheme, I can obviously go down the basic payment template. But for now, I'm going to scroll until I can see ownership boundary. By clicking on that, I'm then asked how I want to create that ownership boundary. And we've got four main routes of creating that boundary. I'm going to be showing you the land registry workflow now, but just to touch on the others, if you've got a single business identifier, you can import it directly. If you've already got a file from a GIS software, you can import it. And so if you are interested in moving from another platform to Land app, you can import files. But if you are struggling, or maybe you've got a lot of data, worth noting that we do have a mapping service that has been helping a number of estates on board. And so do just get in touch with us if you need help with that. And then the fourth one, sorry, is if you've got existing data within the land app, you can bring that data across. So I'm going to choose pick from land registry. And what that does is that then loads the polygons, the areas of all of the land, the registered land in my view, and they are pink outlines. If I want to choose them, I can just select them. By clicking on them, what it does is it turns it from pink to orange, and it also highlights all of the other polygons that have the same title number. So this single polygon here is joined to about 7 others on the title number. And you can see that when I click on one. If you don't want that to happen, you can toggle off that rule and then just select the single polygon like so. But for the demo, I'm just going to create a boundary with this title number, this one, and just a couple of others. And you can see how easy it is just to click the polygon, and it's then just it's filling out all of those polygons that have the same title number, like so. Okay. And that's how you start to build up that estate boundary. I'm not going to try and do the whole of the Chumley estate. I'm just going to choose this arbitrary area. Once I'm then happy with it, I can then hit next and give this a name. And from Dan's little infographic sheet that we just showed you, ownership, and I'm going to call this Chol Estate. Finish. And now what that's done is that is now taken those polygons from HM registry. So they're the authoritative polygons that are currently held on the title, and they have now brought over onto my plan layers. These are interactive shapes, each of them independent to themselves. So I can click on each of them and find out a bit more information about that particular polygon. So for example, I've clicked on this one. Its area is 64.66 hectares. Its title number is CH651263. And the Inspire ID as well is logged in there as well. So you can get the title numbers from the land app. And as a note, if you do want to get further ownership information, you can do that through the land app professional subscription as well, which I will show you in a moment. Once you've got your plan, the first thing is we wanted to create that authoritative boundary. So what we wanted to do is just double check that we're happy with the areas of interest and whether there's anywhere in particular that we want to potentially edit, add, move, amend. The first question that we always get is how do I start tidying up little fragments of data and making it look a bit cleaner? So the first thing I would do is if you right click on a polygon, you can select all polygons. So you can see now I've highlighted everything. The next thing you can do is you can then en masse change the styling of that polygon by either just improving or increasing the opacity or maybe increasing the fill as well. And what that does is that then allows you to start identifying where there might be data that's not quite as tidy as you want. So I can see a prime example is I've got this little artifact here, which is basically there's just a little error in the data from HM registry, and the same with over here. So if you want to tidy that up, what you can do is you can pretty much iron out, so to speak, the areas that are I've got these little data, or even areas like this woodland block that I've missed off. And the way you do that is you first click on the polygon. You now want to hit draw at the top left, and you want to choose area. And then you can draw an arbitrary shape over those two features like this. And that's basically saying, I want to iron out everything there. And then what you do is you use our subtract function, which is pretty much a way of hole punching that shape through the other. And you can see when I do that, I've now removed those artifacts. And then the final thing to do is select one on the left and select two in the middle and merge them together. And now what I've got is I've got a clean area. I've got no more of those artifacts floating in the area. And also I've included that woodland block in my ownership boundary. So you can start tidying up using that process. Other ways that you can tidy up the area are by merging polygons together. So you may not want them to stay as independent blocks for your ownership boundary. So you can hold Shift on your keyboard and select one or more polygons. So actually here you can see they're actually joined. Holding Shift and I've selected 1, 2, and I can merge them together as well. So what I've done is I've now turned that polygon from 2 into 1. Again, I can see that there's some untidy artifacts. Just to recap on that, first going to draw an area like so. just covers all those little flashy bits. And then I'm just going to subtract and iron out that boundary. And you can see then I'm getting a clean map without any of those little nodes getting in the way. Okay. You can, if once you've chosen a boundary, there might be that you've missed an area of land that you know is under your ownership. Instead of going through the new button in that case, you can actually turn on the data layer that represents all of the ownership information. And you do that by hitting data layer at the top right. And again, double check that my head might be in your way. And then there's a category called ownership. And in there are all the freehold, leasehold, or other data from the Registry of England and Wales. And there's also a Register of Scotland one there as well. So I turn on Land Registry Freehold. You can see it then loads up all those polygons we looked at earlier. And I'm actually just going to change my existing boundary from red just to a slightly different color so we can see the difference. So there we are. Blue's what I've currently got in my boundary, and red's what's outside. So let's say in this example, I want to include this woodland block as well in my boundary. What you can do is you can select it, you can right click on it, and you can hit copy to plan. Once you've copied it to plan, you can bring it over to your ownership Cholm estate. Now, when I go to turn off the Land Registry Freehold, I'm left with that polygon because I brought it over to my ownership plan. Just to show you that one more time, turn on the freehold data, find the polygon or polygons of interest by holding Shift, and then right-clicking. I'm just going to take these little ones, right-clicking and bring over by hitting copy to plan, choosing ownership, and hitting features. Turning off the layer, and you can see all those different polygons. The final thing I just want to show you, just a little trick. If you want all of them to be colored the same, you can see that these ones aren't colored that blue. What you want to do is first select one of these blue polygons and then hold Shift and select the other ones. Go into Style, and then you can just touch the opacity, and then the opacity is, the fill is then spilled into those additional polygons as well. Okay, so that's you building a bit of a plan. The other thing that you may want to do is add some labels, but I will firstly just quickly move over to the tenancy planning before I do that. To create that tenancy map then, what I want to do is I want to create a duplicate of this ownership plan. And the way I do that is I hit the 3 dots next to the ownership layer, go down to duplicate, and this time I want to create an ownership management layer. As a note, in our product updates, we're releasing soon an ownership management layer, which will be hopefully in the next 2 weeks, and I'll discuss that in a moment. But for now, keep it in the ownership boundary, ownership management, and hit create plan. And what I've done is I've now created a replica of that ownership layer that's on top of my existing one. So you can see I can toggle them on and off on the left-hand side. But this will now give me the freedom to start coloring in and labeling all of these different components to represent my different clients or my different tenants or my different leases. I'm selecting on one polygon, for example. I've obviously got the title number there, but I can add a name, and that name could be tenant 1, and that could be FBT, farm business tenant. Hit show on map and hit accept. And what that does is that now has labeled my polygon with tenant 1 FBT. I may also want to change the style so I can start to differentiate between them as well. So let's just say tenant 1 is a slightly pink color. Again, just to repeat that with this block, select it, go into the name and edit, call this tenant 2 AHA, show on map, click, and then change the style as well to yellow. So you can see that we're building up that tenant plan nice and easily using the drawing tools that you've got available to you. You might have multiple polygons that represent a single block. So let's just say these two are in a sporting lease. Again, I've held Shift on my keyboard to select 1 and select 2. I can then for both of them edit and say, I don't know, sporting lease 1. And hit show on map, and it's labeled both of them at the same time. And again, I can style them, and maybe for a sporting lease, I want to add a little black hash on that as well. So you can then start to build up those sporting lease plans as well. You may want to merge areas together. So just to my final point on that, building that management plan, is I've selected these two. They both could belong to an in-hand farm. In-hand farm. One. Show a map. But instead, before labeling them independently, I may want to merge them together by hitting this merge button at the top. That is then created a single polygon that I can give a color to. And again, just tidying those artifacts just to reiterate, just to make it clean, because we do see it quite often. Like so, draw the polygon over the top and subtract. Merge them together as well. So you can see you can then get a clean layer. While I've been labeling those and changing the name, on the right-hand side, the name of those polygons should be available in that left-hand side. So I've got lots of polygons that I haven't named, but if I wanted to, for example, zoom to tenant number 1, I can click on the name in the list, hit the 3 dots, and I can zoom to tenant number 1 as a feature. So that hopefully will give you at least the basic skill set to start building up an ownership boundary. There's a couple of other things you may want to do just to quickly show you. You may want to split polygons in half. So let's say that this top section is coming out of this tenant and moving across to another tenancy. I may want to right click and hit split, and I can split those areas. I'm just going to do it very arbitrary at the moment. I'll show you how to be a bit more accurate in a moment. And then you can move that tenant out of tenant 2 by changing the color and changing the name as well. Let's go back to in hand. Let's say that's gone in hand now. In hand farm, like so. Okay, so I basically now just split an existing polygon into 2, and that lease is now changed on my map. Building that management, building that confidence to use it, you can then obviously build up a nice picture. Also worth saying, if you're collaborating with many people on the map and you've got your tenant plan as you want, you can lock that project by hitting the lock plan on the left-hand side, which means if someone comes into the map to try and edit tenant 1, they click on the shape, but they can't edit, they can't change the color, they can't change the name, they can't split or merge it. Once you've got your ownership boundary, once you've got those components, as mentioned, we would recommend, especially for estates, is purchasing the Ordnance Survey master map data. And the Ordnance Survey master map data is the authoritative data that underpins this base map that you can see. However, by purchasing the data, you get access to the actual shapes of the data, so the buildings and the building areas and the field parcel outlines, but you also get access to free prints for your area of interest as well. The way that you do that is you go into the new button at the top left, you hit buy data, and you're then met with these different data sets that you can purchase. The one I'm referring to is Master Map Topography Layer by Ordnance Survey. You can hit that, and then you're asked to define your area of purchase, which in this is my ownership layer, Cholm Estate. You're then asked the intersect setting. So cut features means that there will be a hard end to the polygons, which along the field boundaries, or you could do whole features, which means that you're given all of the entire polygon or line. So for example, if I bought with whole features and there's a road going through, I'd be left with a fuzzy edge because I'd probably get that entire road going out there. So for most estates, we'd recommend doing cut features. This can be a Cholm demo. Once you then put your estate in, you're then met with a quote. So the quote can be, it's dynamic and it depends on where you are in the country, but it's calculated on your plan. Just as a note, you can actually purchase the data for a frame instead, and that then just calculates the price of buying that frame, depending on where it is in the country. And you can see it's dynamically updating that quote. For the demo, I'm just going to use the plan ownership boundary. I then hit buy now, and what that does is that just gives a pop-up message for you to confirm that purchase with the quote, the area, and the price. For our professional users, you can also assign a job code. So say you're either handing this off to the accountant or an external client that's paying for it, you can give it a job code, and then you can define whether it's billable or non-billable. Those tags just come out of your monthly accounts report, which I won't be showing today, but there's definitely guidance on our website. Once you hit buy now, what that does is that then tells the land app your license has been activated. So we activate a license for you. We also send your boundary through a workflow that is just in a moment when I refresh, going to hopefully serve the Ordnance Survey master map shape to me. So it's going to take another 5 seconds before I refresh. There's apologies. I hit the wrong button there. I'm just going to hit refresh rather than trying to do a shortcut and be smart. And you can see now what I've got is I've been served OSMM area and OSMM labels. What that's done is that is now taking that fairly crude boundary that we created and given me all of the features from master map that make up that area of interest. So I've now got the field boundaries. I've now got the building footprints. And within the building footprints, you can see I've got detailed areas of how big each feature is as well. This data is the authoritative data that you need for planning applications and for any other authoritative rights. So if you are, say, applying to your local authority, purchasing the master map gives you the authoritative shape for you to then submit to them. The other benefit of buying the OS master map is you can generate a report for that estate. And I'm going to be doing that by hitting this report button at the top right, hitting add plan, and then choosing to summarize my OSMM area Chol demo. This is then an instant breakdown of your estate by all the various master map codes. So this is a schedule of what's contained within your red line boundary, both the total area, but also the total number of all these different features. So in my arbitrary area, I've got 270 buildings, which take up 3.83 hectares of my estate. And you can see all these different codes, including the natural environment. So for example, we get a breakdown of our ratio between mixed and conifer woodland, how much rough grassland we've got, and how much of all these other infrastructural codes as well. That report can be exported, so you can download that to an Excel file and have that logged on your system, or you can have a look at a more granular view, which is what we call the table view, which is a row by row, every individual feature that makes up your estate. Okay. Once you've purchased that as well, you can start to use that data to create a plan. So just to quickly show you very arbitrary case, but let's just say I'm applying for planning permission on this field. I've got the authoritative shape of that field that I can copy over to a separate plan by right-clicking and choose copy to plan. And I then choose new plan, and probably for this one, I'd use the sales template, or maybe even the blank, which is a catch-all template. So let's just call sales development, just to show you, create a new plan. I've now brought over just that particular polygon, which is the authoritative ordnance survey polygon, of which I can then style, label, draw shapes on, etc. So let's just say, argument's sake, I wanted to do a little building like so, I'm drawing my little building plan. Ooh, so, with the area on it in meters squared. But you can see then I've now got the field boundary, I've got my shape, and I can start saying what I want that shape to become. Okay. I'm just going to show you a couple of other functions like duplicate, and hit duplicate, and what that's done is that has now replicated my building, so I can start to draft up a bit of a site plan for my development site, etc. But all using that authoritative data to start with. The final thing I wanted to show before I just cover a couple of slides about some upcoming webinars is for that ownership boundary. At the start, I showed you the different data layers that I was toggling on and off, and I was toggling on habitat and a couple of geology and some designations. However, it might be, it can be quite arduous trying to toggle on all 90 of our data layers. And so for our professional subscribers, what you can also do is you can run a report on your ownership boundary. So once you've got the boundary, you can go back into that same reports button, but this time I want a data layers report, which is this second tab here. And I can hit create report and ask the land app to firstly look at my ownership boundary. Next, compare that ownership boundary with either specific layers, just show me public rights of way, or you can just do catch-all categories, i.e. show me all the designations, all of the geology, all of the historic landscape, etc., that my boundary falls within. Hit next and give it a name. So just a demo report and done. And what LandApp has now done is it's take that ownership boundary and it's running it through all of our entire database, so our 85 layers. And in approximately 30 seconds, it should have generated a report for me that shows me, one, where everything I do intersect is, the total length of public right of way, the total area of priority habitat, but also where I don't intersect a data layer as well, i.e. am I not in a designation or am I not in a targeting zone for water quality? So that report has now been generated for my 1,000 or so hectares from this grid reference. And you can see then it's given you that instant insight for how many meters of public right of way does my estate have. In this case, nearly 5,500 in my polygons. Other layers, I'm not going to talk through them all, but obviously local planning authorities. If you're doing valuations for estates, you know what the radon levels are. UCO, if you're doing England woodland creation, you know whether you're in the priority area for some of those extra payments, and some other data layers as well that may be useful. Rather than toggling on and off layers, use the data layer report to get instant feedback on what does that ownership boundary intersect, and what does it not intersect as well. Land grade, for example. All of these are then data layers that if you are interested in seeing, you know, what part of the estate is grade 2 and grade 3 agricultural land, you can go back to your map, you can go into the data layers and search for land grade. Oh, what's it called? Provisional agricultural land classification, toggle on that layer, and now I can see where on my estate is the grade 2 and where on my estate is the grade 3. And that's just a quick way of, one, just checking that ratio, and two, then visualizing that ratio as well. Okay, so that's the end of the drawing the ownership boundary and tenancies. The final thing I want to show you before I go to the slides is the collaborate function. At the top right, you can hit this share a map button and add neighbors, friends, family to your map. I'm adding my colleague Rosie, who's currently handling the Q&A for us. And you've got 3 levels of permission. Read only means they can come in and view the data, but they can't edit anything. Editor means they can come in and edit that data, including delete or add data. And then publisher, we'll cover in the next webinar, which is on Tuesday, which gives them the ability to share that map to their own dashboard and to their own map of maps. So you might be, for example, if you're part of a facilitation fund or you want your estate to be part of a farm cluster, you might be adding the facilitator to your map as a publisher, so they can start using some of your data as part of a landscape plan. Hit add viewer. That will then automatically email them with a referral code if they haven't got an account, which they can then log in and see the data that you've created. Okay, so that's the end of the demo on that front. What I want to just touch on then is just a couple of updates that are coming from the LandApp. The first thing to say is that we've built a workflow that can turn a CSV file, so a spreadsheet with the land registry title numbers, into a boundary. And we'll be hopefully releasing that over the coming weeks. But in the meantime, if you're interested, do contact sales. They should be able to help you. And it basically turns a CSV into a polygon, so you don't need to worry about manually trying to do that. The second one I touched on as well is we've got a new template for ownership management, which will formalize both the styling and the codes for different types of acquisitions and disposals, as well as all those various in-hand enterprises you might have, forestry, farming, etc., rights and tenancies. And also we're in the early stages of doing a property management integration with a couple of property management softwares. In the questionnaire, when you leave this webinar, we do ask about your property management software. So if you are using property management software, please vote in that, because the answers to that will dictate which one we go with first. As a note, we've got an upcoming webinar on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 11 a.m., which I do think is relevant for estates to attend, which is around biodiversity offsetting. During this webinar, we're launching some new functionality, which I think would be really valuable to you. The first one is a best guess UK habitat map. So we can take a farm boundary, run it through an algorithm and output UK HAB codes ready for your biodiversity assessment. We've also got some new functionality about suggesting to the estate where is good for habitat creation and enhancement. And then we've also got a biodiversity unit calculator that on the fly can appraise your estate without needing the initial ecological survey. And that's not to replace the ecological survey, it's to show you your estate's potential, to make you understand whether it's worth spending money on an ecologist or an advisor to come and help. So it just gives you that first insight into a potential of the estate, using the best guess, using those opportunity maps as well. And just for a bit of a teaser, we've been putting a number of farms through this process already. And this is our founder's family farm that's in the later stages of biodiversity offsetting. We've taken the farm outline, drafted a management plan, automatically then calculated the biodiversity units, and then automatically started looking at how those feed into the absolute costs of that establishment. So there's a summary there, but for this 90 acre farm, which is 35 hectares, they're looking at around £25,000 a year for biodiversity units over 30 years, which means that we're in the sums of about £2.5 million just on 35 hectares. So the market is forming, and we really want to help as many of your estates mobilize. And we do think we've got a really nice system to at least give you that insight about potential, whether it is worth paying an ecologist to make you reach those sums and more. Other update is that our mobile app is also out now. So if you're on our professional subscription, you can download the mobile app. It's in first version, so it's allows you to do photo evidencing. So particularly if you're doing a stewardship scheme, or you're currently in a stewardship and you need to go collect some evidence that you've completed some of those capital items, really good companion for that. Plus you can also measure in the field as well. So if you need to go step out a fence line, or you need to go map out the area of that lapwing plot you've created, you can use the mobile app. Thank you all for listening. We've now got just over 15 minutes to do Q&A, and happy to answer those now. Thank you so much. Okay, so there's a darker red polygon from the land registry selection. Does this mean it could be double selected? Yes, we've got some eagle-eyed viewers, which is great to hear. What they're referring to is there are elements of the land registry. If I turn on the freehold, he says, I'll zoom in a bit more here, where the polygon is slightly darker than the other one. And that's probably that there's an error in the HM registry data set. So that means there's probably two polygons on top of each other. Now, we don't have an official link in with HM registry yet, although we'd love to. So you do need to just go through the official avenues if you want to make any changes to that data set. A question from Alan. What about unregistered land in relation to the land reg? Can you pick unregistered land from land registry other than freehand draw? So if it's unregistered, at the moment, we don't have a polygon layer for that area. You can turn on the different land registry layers and just double check that it's not included in a leasehold or a freehold. But for example, these areas are just completely unregistered. Now we have been requested to try and create obviously a negative polygon, i.e. where is the polygons that are unregistered. We haven't at the moment. However, those with the Ordnance survey purchase, for example, this one. Oh no, I clipped it, didn't I? I didn't purchase for the whole area. But you can access that Ordnance survey shape through the Ordnance survey purchase. So you would then be able to create that polygon with authoritative data that you can then submit to HM registry. You can draw it freehand, but just be aware that you might be better off trying to get that OS master map for that area to have that authority. Luke Hemmings, when you end up with one or more polygons covering each other or as duplicates of each other within the same plan, is there any way of selecting them or ordering how they lie on top of each other? Okay, Luke, good question. Yes, there's certain things you can do. I mean, one of them, as we've just covered, is just the density of color is just an indication. And what we're referring to here is if we've got two polygons that are the same on top of each other, can you identify them? So let's just say, argument's sake, I've got a polygon like this. Obviously, that one is easier to spot. The way you could do it is if you click on the other polygon and it highlights over that one, I know that there's one polygon underneath the other. To avoid that, you need to make sure that you've subtracted. And so you can subtract by hitting that buffer tool and subtract. And I've then hole punched that little red square through the field. So now when I click on the field, you can see I've got a little donut hole in the middle of my parcel. You can, in that situation, Luke, change the order of the polygons. So at the moment, the red polygon is on top of the bigger polygon. If I wanted to switch those round, I can click on one of them, go to the 3 dots in our more function, and then I want to bring this one forward. So I want to move this one from the back to forwards by hitting that. Now, when I've done that, I can't click on that little red square because it's hidden behind. So I've now brought the bigger shape forward. Just to reverse that, just to show you, I can't click on it at the moment, but if I go into more and send it backwards, click off the shape, I can now select that polygon. We are thinking of ways to make it easier for you to see it, Luke, and as part of the dashboard upgrade, we are doing a page about data errors coming up soon as well. So we can detect when there's overlap, but we don't want to, tell you it's wrong because there might be purposeful overlap. What is the purpose of different plans? I just choose blank every time. No, it's a really fair question. So the first thing is that the plan templates have different codes in. The blank template is kind of a catch-all code that includes just some generic infrastructure codes and generic tenancy codes. But by using the other templates, you access new codes. So if you're doing a basic payment, don't use the blank template. That's hopefully obvious. The other benefit you get is by using these templates as and when's the right time, you can also download clearer reports. So when you go to export the data or go and click a data plan report like I did for the Ordnance Survey master map template, you get a broken down schedule of all the different codes rather than just, all of them being called area with like an aggregation of the two. We're really keen to release this estate management or the ownership management template soon, because even on this plan that I did together, visually it looks right. But if I went to run an estate report on this plan like this, I don't get a breakdown of the tenancy types. I don't see, okay, how much is my farm business tenancy? How much of my forestry? So in the next couple of weeks, when we release that, it's really important to try and use that template because you'll get a really nice schedule of all those different types of leases, tenancies, in-hand farming, etc., that makes up your ownership template. Simon, is the data link in the new plan dynamic or static? It's static at the moment, Simon. And what Simon means by that is earlier I duplicated this plan into my ownership management template. They are no longer linked. So what that means is if I update the tenancy boundaries like I had done, I added those blocks up here, Simon, they're not showing on, maybe they are. When did I add them? I must have added them before. Sorry. Yeah, but if I did add a new shape, they won't be on. Actually, let's demonstrate that. If I delete this shape from my ownership boundary, it's not updated on my estate management plan. Okay, so they are now separate plans, so just be aware of that. How do you link two separate polygons but keep them as separate polygons? Yeah, it's a good question, and I didn't actually show the field naming, but you can add field names. So how did I do that? Remind myself. So field names. Oh yeah, you need an SBI number when you do field names. So when you import your SBI number, which might be worth me just very quickly demoing because I know that was meant to be part of the demo, is if I say just download the SBI number for this block by hitting my RPA large import, which just allows me to download a section of the estate. And I'm just going to create, this is where you can start to link field boundaries. So I'm just going to download land parcels for that area. Hopefully that will bring me some vector map. It'll take approximately 2 moments, but then that should allow me to then link plans within a field name. Land parcels demo, great, that's worked. Let's see what's there. Okay, perfect. So what I've got now is I've got some polygons from my SBI number. You can see those, and they then sit nested within field boundaries. So they can be multiple polygons within a field area. So let's just argument's sake say this is called field. Oh, spell field 1. I can then nest other polygons within that field 1 by moving. So let's just say I draw a polygon over here. Slightly, so where's that? This one, and I want to move that area to my field 1. and save. And you can now see that I've moved, that polygon is now nested within that feature. So I've now got 2 polygons within that one folder, so to speak. Hopefully that answered your question. Well, lots of questions. And if we don't have time to answer all these, by the way, I've got 10 more minutes, but if we don't have time, we will definitely follow up on email. Catherine says, how often is the OS data updated? I.e. when someone plants a new woodland. So we every quarter get given an updated data set. So every 3 months, we update our data set. When OS master map gets updated is really due to, it's now due to customer pressure. So if you've planted a new woodland, it might take a couple of years to show on the master map unless you fill out on their website, you can put a change request and they will then go and survey it either via satellite or actually send a person out to survey it. So it just depends on, I don't think there's a single rule of thumb for OS data. Rob Brown, if I buy estate master data for a whole estate, can I then easily split this out by individual ownership? In my case, I have 7 ownerships. So we can help you on that one, Rob. We are releasing a little toolbox very soon to do exactly that. And so what Rob means by that question is you bought a single OS master map that looks like this, but what happens if I want to then split it out by my management layers, which were these blocks? We can clip one by the other, and you can then have 7 different layers, for example, for your 7 managements. Possible. We're just hoping to release a toolbox soon to allow you to do that yourself. Can you style OS master map data can you style the OS master map data as the website runs very slow with all the layers, etc.? So you can change the styling of the OS master map if you want. So for example, if I want to change what an agricultural field looks like from this yellow, I can right click and select them all. And it might be that I want to maybe get rid of all the transparency and put a black border around the outside, or brown border. That's the pattern. Sorry, I've chosen the wrong border. Like so. I've now just edited that master map data for myself, and I then have a slightly different view of that master map. So you can be quite bespoke. The way I did that, by the way, was right click on a particular feature, select feature type, and that's then selected all agricultural land. The same could be for mixed woodland. I can select all the mixed woodland, and I can change the style however I wish. So you can make it a bit more bespoke. And the point around things getting slow is a valid one. We're working as much as we can to improve it. Big estates, just be aware that don't leave too many plans switched on the left or too many data layers switched on the right. Only have the ones on that you need to use, and it will make the experience a lot better. So Alan, your point around public footpaths. So Alan's asked, public rights of way aren't separated in the footpath bridleway. Is that data available? Yes, it's something that we've been meaning to do for a while. The data is actually there, Alan. If you click on if you click on one of them, it's hidden, but actually the first 2 letters of the description tell you the difference between a footpath, which is FO. There's bridleway, which is BR, and there's a couple of other codes. So it's probably just onto us to update the styling. There we are, BR is bridleway. So the data is there and it is live in Land App. We just style it all as ubiquitous orange dashes, whereas actually we could probably be a bit smarter with that. So Rosie, we can take that one away and feed that to the team. Question from Sarah, should we use our SBI data or land registry or both? If you purchase the data, can you add it at a later date or delete areas that are sold? Is it updated as changes are made? Is this an annual purchase or one-off? Okay, quite a few components in there. So Sarah, yes, if you've got an SBI number, I didn't show it during this workflow, but during the introductory webinar, I do definitely recommend downloading the SBI number, either just by hitting import data and getting it all in here, or by, if you're a professional subscriber and you just want a section of the estate, using the workflow that I just showed a moment ago, which is in the buy data. We've got the RPA import. The licensing is annual, and I didn't actually show that, but you can renew it automatically in the app by going to your data purchases page. And in here is all the different purchases that you've made based on your estate. So for example, here, this is the demo that I just showed you, where I can download my OS license. And after a year, this download as button will turn to a renew now button. So you can simply just click that and then renew your license. There's the license PDF for your terms and conditions, etc., for what I've just purchased. Then your point around the dynamism element are changes made is updated. So once you purchase the OS master map, you receive a static copy of that data for the 12 months to use. Once it updates, i.e. goes into month 13, you can add to that data, or throughout the year you can add, but it doesn't automatically do that for you. You need to manually add the new polygons, as I did before, and purchase the new areas of OS master map. So say I've just purchased or sold, a different block, get that boundary, and then buy that area of data again. Claudia, are the data layers up to date with recent changes to scheme eligibility? Yes, Claudia, I'm not sure particularly what scheme you're referring to, but yes, they are. We're trying our best as possible to keep up to speed with all the gov agencies. They do release quite a few data sets. So recently, for example, as mentioned, the new scheme of England woodland creation, we've got there 3 datas and another 3 coming out soon around red squirrel and flood zones and something else. So those targeting are up. So that's Forestry Commission. And then the catchment sensitive farming and stewardship targeting, the only ones that we still struggle to get licensing for is the species data. So if any of you have any contacts in the Environment Agency, I think there's a bit of a blocker on license with those, but so the priority areas for section 41 species are one of the main eligibility layers that we don't have. But if you put in the chat which particular eligibility layer you're referring to, that would be useful. Question from Rupert. Is the OS data mapping cost a one-off or an annual sub? Yeah, I just covered that before. It's an annual license. So you need to every year you need to renew your Ordnance Survey license, and hence why you can do it in app now. And you will be automatically notified once your license is coming out of date. As a note on that, actually, if you've previously bought an OS license with, say, another software or another company, we will honor that license and get you all the data within your license term and just let you know when you need to renew it. So if you've, say, 6 months ago bought a license, you're welcome to use that license with Land App. We're not going to charge you again. The license is for you as a user, not for the software you're using. Would you recommend creating a user to be the gatekeeper for the master data? Yeah, it's a really good question, and I probably would say yes. If you've got a relatively big team, just have a single point of contact that's kind of the Land App, advocate, so to speak, and they attend the training, they get in contact with support, but they also ultimately are in control of the master data. They're the ones that lock the projects and are the ones that edit the data. If you have too many cooks, it can sometimes, lead people down the wrong way. So use lock projects and only invite people as view only, unless you absolutely want them to edit. Okay, it's a really good point. Another question from Luke. Will there be a cost for converting CSV to polygons? Do you plan it any function? Yeah, so Luke, yeah, CSV to polygons, I think we're just going to, I need to double check with the team. I think it's just going to be in the subscription. So subscribers will be able to access it, but don't quote me on that. I need to discuss with the product team. And then Luke, around UCO applications, yes, we've got, I think your Forestry Commission, which is great to have you on board. We've got an official launch with Forestry Commission coming around Easter time, which is a UCO tool. It's a bit of an exclusive, but yes, watch this space. We've got a way of now serving to landowners in England, everywhere they're eligible for UCO, but how much payment they would get via both UCO payments and Woodland Carbon Code estimations as well. John, hi, can you change the position of a feature label on a map or is it fixed? So you can't change the label itself. So I can't at the moment move this label over here, but what I can do is I can draw a separate label and plonk it here, for example, by going new and text point, and then editing it, saying whatever I want it to say, label, like this. And then I can draw an arrow from that label to the map to say where I want that label to be. And you can make that look quite tidy, and it does look quite smart if you spend a little bit of time on it. Guys, there's still lots of questions coming through. So if anyone does need to shoot, it's now 11 o'clock. I will keep going through the questions for the next 10 minutes. If you do leave now, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, if you could answer the survey questions on your way out, it'd be much appreciated. And hopefully see some of you on Tuesday's webinar, where you can register for that on our website on the community page. It's going to keep going through these then, because they seem to be coming in, which is great. Lizzie says, is it possible to select land boundaries from the registers of Scotland? Yep, Lizzie, so if you're in Scotland, just to quickly demo, here we are. let's go over here. You need to turn on that Scotland layout first. So I can search for Scotland. Just be aware that the Scottish Land Registry is only about 45% complete. So certain areas just don't have registered land. So if it's not officially registered with them, get in touch with them. They're really keen to help, digitize all this. But again, the same principle. If it is there, I can hold Shift, select the 3 polygons, copy to a new plan, and I can have my Scottish owner Scott, for example, on a blank template. And then I get exactly as before. I've now got some polygons in Scotland that I can use and buy OS master map on. Oh, emojis. Rob Brown, please can you demo the land registration template for identifying unregistered land? So the land, yeah, the land registration template is, where are we? Land registration is basically a formal template for you to declare where unregistered land is, and for you to then create a separate plan that you can submit. So the way I would demonstrate that is, let's just say hypothetically in this Register of Scotland, which we just had a look at, it's got this unregistered block. What I would do is I would either try and manually draw that shape, or if you're a subscriber, using the Ordnance Survey interactive base map. And I've not demoed this yet, Rob, but just to quickly show you. So step 1, create the template or create the plan. So use template, land registration. I'm going to go for, why can't I draw freehand? Oh, here we go. Skip, just draw. And I'm going to go land reg, for example, hit finish. So now what I've got is I've got a single polygon. Let's turn off those. A single layer, sorry, called land reg. It's currently got nothing in. There's no data in it. The next thing I would do is then hit draw. Actually, no, I wouldn't. I'd first hit turn on interactive map, which is this bottom shape here. Turn the interactive map on, which basically means I can now trace Ordnance Survey map data. I would then hit draw an area, and then I would basically I would then use the interactive map to trace the area of unregistered land, like so. Ooh, it's going all the way around there, but that's fine for now. You can see it's then just picking up the boundary of that OS master map, hit finish. And basically this is the area of unregistered land that I've got on this area. And I'd literally just allocate it to the unregistered land code. And I would probably, just for styling, make it look pretty by doing this. I've now got a polygon, which is trace the master map, which I can then submit to Rural Payments Register of Scotland, for example, or a planning authority or HM registry about the area of unregistered land. Hopefully that helped. Sally, is there a way to add extra info to a layer? Sorry, Sally, I was meant to cover that. There absolutely is. So if I go back to my tenant map, which is this one, zoom to my tenants, like so, and unlock it so I can edit it. You can actually add your own attributes by clicking on a polygon, and then at the bottom right, sorry, there's new attribute. And so, for example, for this one, I could add tenure code, which is part of my property management, and then type in the text, I don't know, whatever it might be, and then hit show on map. And I've now got a new attribute, which I've called tenure code, in my polygon. We've done that. Daniel Parker, when loading up some of my own maps, aerial photography, I get the file too large area. Would I get more space with a professional account? So Daniel, the upper limit is 50 megabytes at the moment. Your own aerial imagery, because it's going to be a raster image, i.e. a data file that is image, like a GeoTIFF, rather than a vector data. Sorry for talking technical. At the moment, it isn't feasible for you to put your own aerial photography in. If you upgrade at the moment, you do get a bit better performance, but the memory is still similar to the free account at the moment. We are changing that very soon though, by the way. But yes, at the moment, aerial photography, you need to probably speak to sales to get a better understanding of how we can get that aerial photography in. At the moment, all the raster data is just the default base maps. Rachel, can you add features which you need to regularly inspect, such as benches, stiles, and dangerous trees? Yeah, you can, Rachel. So what I would probably recommend doing is creating a new template on the blank one. We don't have a formal template for safety inspections. I would then just create I don't know, let's just call it survey points, like so. And then on that survey points, I can drop point data and just start, arbitrary dropping some points like so. And then I can then assign those to a number of different features. So it could be, in your case, tree. And then on the name, I can say dangerous, or description would probably be a dangerous tree, like so. And now I've got a point data set of just where I need to go and inspect those trees, for example. And that principle can work for all the different other points that we have on there. If there's a particular workflow, especially with the mobile app now, we're really going to be focusing some effort on survey forms. So, dangerous tree surveys is something that's already on our radar. But if there's any other types of surveys that you're regularly doing on the estate, do drop us a message, or in the feedback form. I think there's another comment section. Please feel free to put it in there. So soil sample is one of those appropriate layers. That's good timing. So the next question is around soil sampling. So now we've got the mobile app. We're just in discussion with some potential partners about what that template looks like, because we're really keen to make sure it's not reinventing the wheel. But we haven't at the moment got an appropriate soil template. But that's not to say you can't drag and drop your own survey points in Land Apps. If you've already done a soil survey and you've got the file, you can drag and drop it onto your map. Just a final couple of questions. I can see a question from Stephen. Can an estate buy OS data for multiple users, or do you have to buy it multiple times? Really good question, Stephen. So you purchase the OS data only once for your estate, and everyone in your estate can use it. The license is in our terms of reference, we cover it, but the license is covered for anyone who's invited as a collaborator to your map. The reason for that is that indicates that they are helping you complete your work, and therefore they're entitled to the same license as you. So you don't need to buy that data for the entire team multiple times. Just purchase it once per year for the entire estate, and everyone within the estate can use it. Is there a tree preservation order layer or a conservation layer? Thanks, Martin. No, and you made the point there that counties hold it. Any data that's held by the local authorities rather than nationally is really quite tricky for Land App to get in. It's a lot of work, and without finding an adequate funding mechanism to pay for that time, we just at the moment really struggle to get local data sets in. We'd obviously love to, but capacity and funding just means that unless we can find a route for that, at the moment we struggle to get the local data sets in. Do you offer help to create the right folder structures and give on ideas how to set up an estate mapping system? Yes, James, I forgot to do that during the demo. I was running a bit out of time. Yeah, so just to quickly show you, you can create a folder by hitting this folder icon at the bottom right. And this could be ownership master, for example, as the first layer. That then creates a folder. You can then drag and drop those layers of relevance into that data, that folder, like so. And then that folder is now tidy on the the left-hand side. You can move that around. In the folder is my different layers, you can see. And then the guidance, yes, as we had the slides earlier, we will share these around, but a good example of how it could look, and obviously this is just an indication, is like this, where you've got a folder with your boundary files, a folder with your ownership management plans, and a folder with all the various BPS, CSS claims that you've made as well. So you can start to file them away. By adding a date to those, a year would make it a bit cleaner as well. So the final one, which has come in, will you share the targeting mailing to landowners with the industry? Say the targeted mailing to landowners within the industry who will be planting trees. So I think what this is referring to is the ability of us notifying landowners of opportunities. Oops, sorry, actually I might put that on anyway. The notifying landowners of opportunities. So data protection is kind of one of our key drives. We need to make sure the data is secure, and we're not sharing any data with anyone. We ask the users to share their data. However, we're fully aware that there's a massive demand at the moment in the sector for transparency from the farmer or the land manager to show, where they're interested in planting trees. And then conversely, from the demand side, from the people investing in land, where they want to fund trees. And so we are technically we're looking at ways to start marrying that up. How we do that, which partners we work with on that is still up in the air. But we do want to get to a point where the land app can be used as a communication conduit for those types of things. I, as a landowner, am looking for tree funding, or we've just planted some trees and I want to share that with the world. Or demand side, we really need some trees in this exact location. Who can help us is something that we're really trying to work out, because that's the great thing about maps. It allows that communication at scale quite easily. But watch this space. For now, I guess the answer to your question is no, not yet. We're not sharing any direct mailing around that, but we'd like to. Okay. Thank you so much for your time and for sticking with us. There's still 60 of you on the call, which is amazing. So hopefully you found that interesting. We will be following up with an email probably on Monday or Tuesday next week with the recording. And also please fill out that feedback form. I will sit here now and just wait another 5 minutes. If anyone wants to raise their hand and come off mute, we can sort that now, but really great having you all here, and good luck with all the mapping. Thank you. We've got one attendee that's raised their hand. Perfect. Simon, I'm going to let you off mute and you can come say hello. Hi, Simon. You're on mute unless that was an accidental hand up, and then I'm happy to remove you from the off mute button.
No, I've unmuted. Forgive me. Sorry.
It's okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Great answer on that issue of transparency of who might benefit from the England Woodland Creation Offer. I think you're really onto something when you say that how the government is about to spend its money in the countryside is something on which we could all get political. And the calculations I've done suggest that there will have to be, if targets are to be met, engagement with larger landowners. And that by definition means a flow of money to, I'll be blunt, the aristocracy, to corporation, to large farmers rather than small farmers. But it's great to see somebody from the Forestry Commission here. I think that the Land App is positioned very, very cleverly or strategically to act as some kind of conduit for monitoring how schemes are coming forward. And I wish you very much the best in that. So thank you for having me along. Great presentation. I really enjoyed this morning. Thank you, Dan.
Welcome, Simon. And just to touch on a couple of those points, we're in business because we want to see the UK landscape change. We're fully aware that there's so much opportunity, but it's also really complex out there. And anything we can do to start helping government spend that money wisely. You know, Countryside Stewardship Plus does have an opportunity to do well. However, it has to be administered correctly and it has to use the tech that's available. You know, we really can't be using a system that relies on PDF paper maps or coloring crayons and spreadsheets. We really, we want to empower the land sector to go digital. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. And the partnership that we mentioned with Forestry Commission is really exciting for us. You know, we've been working in the background with them for the last 9 or 12 months. And we think we've got something really exciting, which is around UCO, around just showing landowners opportunities, using Land App predominantly as a marketing tool, i.e. let's advertise the schemes through Land App so people can at least see what the opportunities are. And if they are interested in getting some advice or having a visit, we can help facilitate that. But at the moment, there's inertia because people just don't know what's happening. There's too much noise. And if we can provide clarity because we can geospatially say, look, you're in a target area for X, Y, and Z, I think we're doing a right thing. So thank you for your comments, Simon. Good to have you as always. And yeah, let us know if we can help further. Perfect. I'm going to bring Martin Steer on. Hi, Martin. And how are you doing? You can come off.
Can you hear me?
I can, Martin. Yes.
Ah, brilliant. Yeah, sorry about the other day. It's the same question, and I don't know whether it's my imagination, but are you sort of working to pick up data from sort of Sentinel and things like that? And the reason I ask was there's a state I've involved in, they've got a lot of veteran trees, and I have taken a few pictures on using the mobile app and started to add them, but it would be a huge job. But if I could sort of pick them up off, say, Sentinel, drop them as points, and then delete the ones which I survey that would give me there. And also hedges layers in the RPA, they're not perfect, and to prepare an RLE1 for quite a large estate or for farms, if there was an easy way of picking it up from satellite data and then sending it as RLE1 through that. Anyway, I think you've got the idea.
Yeah, so the first point is just more up-to-date satellite imagery is something that we're working on. The mobile app runs on Google Earth, which we've been getting feedback is actually slightly better than the Bing imagery that we've got on the desktop app. So that's interesting. We have been playing with Sentinel data. So that's the European agency's open source. And I mentioned that best guess habitat layer that we're going to be demoing next week. That uses Sentinel data. So that goes and checks up-to-date data and looks at the temporal element of the habitats and tries to indicate where certain habitats are. For your use case of the trees, unsure about timeline when we'll be able to get that into you, but it's something we're definitely working on. And then your second point, which I've just completely gone blank on, sorry, it was...
So hedges that are sort of badly mapped on the RPA, whether there was a way of...
Yeah, so just to show you the one that we're hopefully going to get in soon, I think is really great, is the Environment Agency recently created a hedge layer for the country using LiDAR. I'm not sure if you've seen this, but this is the data layer that I want the land app to host, which is any trees over 2 meters come out in this map, not in really hedgerow, more in a village. Let me go to a city, but I'm in London. That's probably not why. That's not going to help. But yeah, this data set I think is a really nice visualization of existing woodland and tree canopies and hedge data that's a bit more accurate than the RPA's data, because this is actually the three-dimensional element of it rather than just the...
I mean, that would work for a lot of the veteran trees, wouldn't it?
Yeah, all right, that's true. So they're being picked up. You can see anything over 2 meters gets picked up. So that might actually answer both your questions. Good point.
Yeah. And so, how far off are you with that being a layer? I mean, without committing, you might not want to answer it.
Let's say 2 months, and if we can do it before, let's be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Martin. I saw a question just come in. Yeah, Martin, nice to have you here. Just had a question come in just around, can we pay Land App to prepare estate maps? We do have a mapping service, do contact sales that can help. We do as much as possible try and empower the estates to do it themselves. It's a lot more valuable to us to, train people up rather than just doing it and then giving you the data and you don't know how to use the tool. But there is avenues of us digitizing data for you if of interest. Okay, I think we've covered everything. That was a bit longer than expected, but thank you all for staying with me. I'm going to close the webinar now, and we will share the recording. Any feedback welcome, and if you could fill out that form, it'd be much appreciated. Have a good weekend and good luck mapping. Bye-bye.